Jonathan Whitmore was a very rich man. He lived in a huge, fancy apartment high above the city, where he could see everything below. He had made his fortune by being tough in business, but his real passion was chess. He loved the game, and he was very good at it. For many years, his maid, Evelyn Carter, had worked for him. She was quiet, hardworking, and always polite. She never complained, even when Jonathan was in a bad mood. Every evening, she cleaned his study while he relaxed in his big leather chair, thinking about his next business move or his last chess game. One night, Evelyn brought her daughter, Mia, to work with her. Mia was only 10 years old, but she was very smart. While her mother cleaned, Mia sat at the kitchen table, flipping through a chess book she had borrowed from the library. She loved chess, even though she had never had a real teacher. She learned by reading and playing against herself. Jonathan, bored and wanting something to do, walked into the kitchen and saw the little girl with the chess book. He raised an eyebrow. "You know how to play chess, kid?" he asked, half smiling, as if he didn't really believe she could. Mia looked up at him with calm, confident eyes. "Yes, sir," she said simply. Jonathan chuckled. He thought this would be funny. A little girl thinking she could play chess against him? He was a billionaire who had beaten some of the best players in the city. "Well, come on then," he said, waving her toward his study. "Let's see what you've got." Mia closed her book and followed him without a word. In the study, Jonathan set up his expensive chessboard. The pieces were made of smooth ivory, carved with great detail. He sat in his big chair, smirking, while Mia sat across from him, her feet barely touching the ground. "You want white or black?" he asked, already assuming he would win no matter what. Mia thought for a second. "Black," she said. Jonathan nodded and moved his first pawn. The game began. At first, Jonathan played casually, not really paying attention. He expected Mia to make silly mistakes, to move her pieces randomly like most kids did. But by the third move, he noticed something strange. Mia wasn't playing like a beginner. Her moves were sharp, precise. Jonathan frowned and sat up a little straighter. By the fifth move, he realized something unbelievable. This little girl wasn't just playing chess. She was outplaying him. And Jonathan Whitmore, the billionaire who never lost, suddenly felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Doubt. Jonathan Whitmore placed the last chess piece on the board with a satisfied smirk. The ivory pieces gleamed under the soft lights of his study, each one carved with perfect detail. He leaned back in his leather chair, already imagining how quickly this little girl would fold under his skill. "All right, kid," he said, pushing a white pawn forward. "Let's see if you can last 5 moves." Mia studied the board for only a second before sliding a black pawn into place. Jonathan barely glanced at her move. He expected her to play like most children, random, hasty, making mistakes without thinking. But then something strange happened. When Jonathan moved his knight, Mia responded instantly, placing her bishop in a spot that blocked his next planned attack. His eyebrows twitched. That couldn't have been an accident. He tried another approach, bringing out his queen early, a risky move he only used against weak opponents. Mia didn't flinch. She calmly moved a pawn, and suddenly, Jonathan realized too late his bishop was in danger. Before he could react, Mia's small hand reached out and captured the piece. "Lucky move," Jonathan muttered, forcing a laugh. Mia didn't say anything. She just smiled, her dark eyes steady on the board. Jonathan's fingers tapped against the armrest of his chair. This wasn't right. He was a champion. He had beaten CEOs, grandmasters, even famous players in high-stakes matches. There was no way a 10-year-old maid's daughter was giving him trouble. He focused harder, his moves becoming sharper. But no matter what he did, Mia countered him. Every attack he planned, she saw coming. Every trap he set, she avoided. By the 10th move, Jonathan's forehead was damp with sweat. His queen, his most powerful piece, was stuck. No matter where he tried to move her, Mia had her surrounded. Jonathan's heart pounded. This couldn't be happening. Move after move, Mia tightened her grip on the game. Jonathan's king had nowhere to run. His pieces were scattered, useless. And then, In a voice so quiet it barely carried across the table, Mia said the word that sent a chill down his spine. Checkmate. Jonathan froze. His eyes darted over the board, searching for a way out. There wasn't one. She had beaten him, a child, in 15 moves.
His mouth went dry.
His hands clenched into fists. This had to be a mistake. A fluke. Again, he growled, already resetting the pieces. Mia nodded, unshaken. And as Jonathan prepared for the second game, one terrifying thought echoed in his mind. What if it wasn't luck? The clock on the study wall ticked loudly as Jonathan Whitmore stared at the chessboard for the 4th time that evening. His fingers hovered over his king, then dropped away. There was no move left to make. Mia had beaten him again. 3 games. 3 losses. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, his expensive suit now wrinkled from hours of tense play. He ran a hand through his hair and looked at the small girl sitting across from him. Her dark eyes were calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply waited. Who taught you to play like this? Jonathan finally asked, his voice quieter than usual. Mia shrugged one shoulder. Books, mostly. And online games. Jonathan blinked. Books? What books? Mia pointed to the worn library book on the kitchen table, its pages filled with chess strategies and famous matches. Jonathan had seen that book earlier and assumed it was far too advanced for a child. A movement caught his eye. Evelyn stood in the doorway, her cleaning supplies forgotten in her hands. She had been watching silently the whole time. Jonathan turned to her. Did you know about this? Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. Mia's been solving chess puzzles since she was 5. Her teacher, at school, noticed first. Said she had a gift. She twisted her rag in her hands. They wanted to enter her in tournaments, but her voice trailed off. Jonathan understood, without her finishing. Tournaments cost money. Travel cost money. Lessons from good coaches cost money. Money that a maid's salary couldn't cover. His gaze returned to Mia. This wasn't just a smart kid who had gotten lucky. This was something much rarer. The way she saw the board, the way she planned moves ahead, this was a true prodigy. A once-in-a-generation talent. And he had almost missed it. Jonathan thought of all the chess masters he'd paid small fortunes to play against. The expensive tournaments he'd sponsored. The grandmasters he'd invited to his parties just to show off. All this time, the most remarkable player he'd ever met had been right here, in his own kitchen. His throat felt tight. For years, he'd judged people by their bank accounts and job titles. He'd dismissed Evelyn as just a maid, and by extension, her daughter as just a maid's kid. Now that same child had humbled him at his own game. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 9 times. Normally, Jonathan would have sent them home by now. But instead, he found himself asking, "Would you like to play one more game?" Mia nodded. As Jonathan reset the pieces, his mind was already racing with possibilities.
This couldn't be the end.
Not after what he'd just witnessed. There had to be more to this story. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Evelyn and Mia sat nervously on the edge of the plush sofa. Jonathan Whitmore paced in front of them, his polished shoes sinking into the thick carpet with each step. He had barely slept all night, his mind racing with what he had discovered. After pouring 3 glasses of orange juice with hands that weren't quite steady, Jonathan finally sat across from them. He took a deep breath. "I've made a decision," he began, his voice more serious than Mia had ever heard it. "I want to sponsor Mia's chess training. Full support. The best coaches in the world. Entry to every important tournament. Whatever she needs to become a grandmaster." Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth. The glass of juice nearly slipped from her fingers. "Mr. Whitmore?
I don't."
"Why would you?" Her voice trembled with equal parts hope and disbelief. Jonathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For a man used to giving orders, explaining himself didn't come naturally. He looked at Mia, who sat perfectly still, her chess book clutched tightly in her small hands. Last night had changed something in him. He had spent years building an empire, collecting trophies, proving he was the smartest person in every room. Then a fourth grader with a library book had dismantled him at his favorite game. Not once, not twice, but 4 consecutive times. Because Jonathan struggled to find words that didn't sound foolish. Because talent like Mia's doesn't come along often. The world should see what she can do. He paused, then added quietly, and because yesterday, your daughter taught me something important. Evelyn wiped at her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. Mia kept staring at Jonathan with that same calm focus she used during their games. It's too much, Evelyn whispered. We could never repay you. Jonathan shook his head sharply. No repayment. This isn't a loan.
Think of it as.
He gestured vaguely, an investment in brilliance. For the first time, Mia spoke. Would I still get to go to school? The question surprised Jonathan. In his world of private jets and elite trainers, regular school hadn't even factored into his plans. But seeing the worry in Mia's eyes, he quickly nodded. Of course. Whatever you want.
School.
Friends. All of it. Evelyn reached for her daughter's hand. Baby, do you understand what this means? Mia looked at the chessboard still set up from last night's games. Then she turned back to Jonathan. Can we play one more game before I decide? A laugh burst from Jonathan's lips, real and unexpected. After everything he was offering, she wanted to play chess first. That simple request told him more about Mia than any contract ever could. Absolutely, he said, already moving toward the board. As he reset the pieces, a strange thought occurred to him. This might be the most important game of his life. Not because of money or pride, but because somewhere between checkmates and orange juice, Jonathan Whitmore had discovered something he thought he'd lost long ago. The joy of being challenged. The bright lights of the International Chess Championship shone down on the stage where 14-year-old Mia Carter sat, perfectly still. Reporters from every major newspaper leaned forward in their seats, cameras flashing as they captured the youngest grandmaster in history preparing for her most important match yet. Backstage, Jonathan Whitmore adjusted Mia's blazer collar just like he had before every tournament since that fateful night 4 years ago. His hands, once used only for signing million-dollar contracts, now carefully straightened the small silver chess piece pin on her lapel, a good luck charm from their very first game together. You nervous? Jonathan asked, though he already knew the answer. Mia shook her head, her dark eyes focused on some distant point as she visualized the game ahead. Just thinking about the Sicilian defense we practiced. Jonathan smiled. That was his Mia. While other teenagers worried about school dances or pop quizzes, she lived in a world of gambits and endgames. He still remembered the first time she beat her professional coach. The way she'd quietly asked, "Can we analyze where you went wrong?" As if it were the most natural question in the world. A tournament official knocked on the door. 5 minutes, Miss Carter. Mia nodded, but as the door closed, she suddenly turned to Jonathan. Her usual calm expression flickered for just a second. Before we go out there, she hesitated, then spoke so softly he almost missed it. Thank you for seeing me. Jonathan froze. Those 4 words carried the weight of their entire journey. He thought back to that first evening, how he'd almost dismissed her as just a maid's daughter. How close the world had come to never knowing Mia Carter's brilliance. His throat tightened as he crouched down to her eye level. No, Mia, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Thank you. In that moment, the billionaire who had once cared only about winning remembered all the ways Mia had changed him. The chess matches that had become their sacred ritual. The way he'd started reading chess theory books just to keep up with her. How he'd turned his private jet into a flying chess club so she could study during tournaments abroad. The loudspeaker announced Mia's name, the crowd erupting in applause. Jonathan gave her shoulder one last squeeze. Go show them what you've got, kid. As Mia walked onto the world stage, Jonathan watched from the wings. The reporters would write about her incredible talent, her historic achievements. They'd mention his sponsorship and call him her mentor. But they'd never truly understand the secret at the heart of their story. That sometimes the greatest victories happen off the chessboard. That a lonely billionaire and a quiet girl from the kitchen had saved each other in ways no trophy could ever measure. and that the most powerful moves aren't the ones you plan, but the ones that change your heart.
The end.